Welcome to Conversations with Authors and Innovators, our timely recorded conversations with authors, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs. I'm Larry Gennari. You probably have seen Authors and Innovators as our annual community book event. Please do take a look at authorsinnovators.org. This is really in support of that. And I'm here with Doug Banks, the executive editor of the Boston Business Journal, and my partner in crime through many authors and innovators over these years. Welcome, Doug. I'm glad that we have a chance to talk to some great authors and thinkers.
Thanks for having me here, Larry. I'm looking forward to our conversation today, and looking forward to talk about some good books and some interesting ideas that we've been thinking about.
Today, Doug and I talk with Chris Roush. Chris is the dean of the School of Communications of Quinnipiac University. He's the author and co-author of more than 10 books, including his most recent one, The Future of Business Journalism, Why It Matters for Wall Street and Main Street. Chris, we'll jump into this. Why does local business journalism matter?
Larry, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. Local business journalism matters because there are 31 million small businesses around the country who rely on business news to make important decisions about their businesses, where they're going to expand, where they're going to contract, how they can find new employees, do they need to launch a new product. You know, small businesses and medium-sized businesses rely on business news for important information, not only for their businesses, but for their own personal lives as well.
I think we all rely certainly on the Boston Business Journal these days, one of those outposts that actually covers local innovators. Doug, you and I have talked about Chris's book. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I love that we're kicking these talks off with this topic. It is the topic that is the most near and dear to my heart. I've certainly been doing local business journalism since 1998, so going on 25 years. There's been a lot of changes, Chris. You write about it in your book. This is lived experience, but we've gone from sort of a business that's predominantly print to one that is predominantly online. And you talk in your book about how we got to where we are today. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about some of the changes, whether it's maybe the business model or how businesses interact with business journalists like me.
Yeah, so it's been, to me, kind of a perfect storm, Doug, in terms of the decline in the amount of business journalism that's being produced, at least on the local and regional levels. We've had a change in the business model. As you mentioned, a lot of publications are now online. And so what that means is for a lot of daily newspapers, they have cut their business news coverage. Because they don't have the print advertising to support it anymore. And for many years, as you know, they were giving away their content for free online. And so that got consumers used to getting that news and information for free. And so now they're getting pushback when they're starting to charge for it. So to me, that's a big deal. One of the major things is the internet has actually caused consumers to look elsewhere for business news and information. When you now are able to get stock prices and mutual fund prices on the internet, that caused daily newspapers to cut that agate out of their printed papers, which caused a decrease in the size of a business section of a daily newspaper. So it's really just been a whole bunch of different things that have caused this kind of decline, as I would call it, in business journalism. On the other side, what you've seen is actually an increase in business journalism at the very high end. If I am a Wall Street trader, or if I am a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and I can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on business news. I can get a Bloomberg terminal on my desk. I can subscribe to the Wall Street Journal or Barron's or the Financial Times. or a bunch of other places that really provide high-end business journalism for the people who are making multi-million-dollar decisions. And it's really led to what I call a dissemination divide in business journalism, in that, the 1% can get the business news and information that they need, but the 99% can't.
I thought that was just a great part of the book. It really opened my eyes because, like all of us, I'm getting up and I'm looking at Bloomberg and CNBC, and the business coverage is very much about that top 1%, and it's all about public companies. And I think you make a great point in the book, Chris, that that's certainly not all there is. So given all of that, and I don't want to give away the book because I want people to get it and read it, how do we fix this?
Larry, as you mentioned, I present a number of different recommendations in the end of the book. I think that technology can be an answer, and that there's a lot of just basic business news coverage, like real estate transactions and unemployment and consumer confidence, that we're beginning to see software that can write those stories. And those are important stories for a small and medium-sized business owner. And I think what that will do is free up the business journalists who are paying attention to what's happening, let's say, in the Boston market, to do the more important stories, to do the more nuanced stories that require analysis. I also point a pretty serious finger at my own industry, higher education. Higher education, in my opinion, has done a really crappy job of understanding and emphasizing the importance of training future business journalists to go out there and cover the stories that need to be covered. There's really maybe a half dozen universities in this country that really do a good job of teaching business journalism. But we all do a good job of teaching students how to cover a city council meeting, or how to cover a board of education meeting, or how to cover a sporting event. All important stories, but businesses are just as important, if not more important. We're all impacted on a daily basis by the businesses that we interact with and the businesses that are in our local economies, and yet we don't teach journalism students how to report and write about those and the importance of doing that. A lot of other recommendations in the book, but to me those are two big ones.
Yeah, I love the advice to students, and I love the solutions, some of the solutions around how to fix it. Doug, you and I have talked about this book. What was your favorite part?
Oh, I think my favorite part was just as I was reading through it, the confirmation of the things that I'm seeing at the front lines. And for us, we're one of 45 business journals across the country. But so for me, Chris, as you mentioned, we're doing in our newsroom a lot of the things that you say need to be done. But there's so many cities that are not in the 45 that we are, where we have a weekly business journal that don't have any business. If they don't have a weekly business journal, whether it's an American City Business Journal or an independent, and they have a smaller daily newspaper that's been cutting back. I mean, we know employment in the journalism industry is half of what it was 20 years ago, so there just aren't enough bodies to throw at these kind of stories. Then I think these deserts, the news deserts that you talk about, Chris, was an alarm call that again, I see a lot of this in my daily work, but I don't think a lot of readers really recognize what they're missing, because the news that you don't hear about isn't news. You just have no idea that it's happening until, say, a bank fails, and we find out that there's things happening that we may have seen coming if there was someone there to report on some of the signs.
Yeah, in fact, I did I think a pretty extensive look at what were the largest cities in the United States that did not have a business publication, either a weekly business newspaper or a business magazine. And frankly, I was shocked at the number of large cities. We're talking cities with more than 500,000 population that had no business news publication at all. El Paso, Texas, places like Macon, Georgia, that are thriving businesses that have thriving businesses in those cities have literally no business news coverage at all. That was really surprising to me when I was doing the research for the book.
Yeah, very, very powerful. And I think certainly opened my eyes and will open the eyes of many readers to the dearth of local business news. I'm talking to you, New England Cable News. The formula can't just be traffic, weather, crime, occasional sports, and puppies. It's really got to include local business. So the book is The Future of Business Journalism, Why It Matters for Wall Street and Main Street by Chris Roush. Please pick this up. Let's talk about some other books. Doug, what are you reading?
Well, I just finished a book that's about 10 years old called Behind the Beautiful Forevers. Catherine Bu. This is a narrative nonfiction. She goes to Mumbai, India, where the building of an international airport and luxury hotels is set up against a shanty town that's built there, and she chronicles the lives of the people who live next to this. It's literally a cesspool. I mean, it's this.
Wow.
It's a sewage lake, and the shanties they live in, and you wouldn't believe it's nonfiction unless you go to the very end of the book and read the author's note, where she talks about how she spent 4 years doing the journalism there with a translator to talk to the locals, and it was. It's a heartbreaking book. It took me a decade. I had heard of it when it won the Pulitzer Prize back in 2012, I think it was, but I finally got to read it, and I just finished it this week.
Wow. So definitely worth reading. Chris, thoughts, recommendations? What are you reading? What do you want people to read?
I am currently reading a book by Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. Sure. But I'm reading his latest book, which is called Project Hail Mary.
A wonderful book.
And although it is fiction, to me, it rings so true about a lot of things going on today. It's a book about how the sun is dying and is emitting less energy and less heat, which is going to cause catastrophic results on Earth if we don't figure out why that's happening and address it. To me, I think it's a really good book. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it, and I've been captivated by it. It was a recommendation from my wife. I have to point that out.
It's wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to put on our recommendation list The Great Escape: The True Story of Forced Labor and Immigrant Dreams in America. It's an astonishing true story of immigrants lured to the U.S. from India and trapped in a forced labor camp with armed guards. This is back in Mississippi. It's also recent. This is a story about how one visionary labor leader led them to escape and get their justice through a suit against that company, the Department of Justice, back in 2015. This is something I thought I'd never read about in the 21st century: forced labor and astonishingly bad conditions. And really the state of our immigration laws as they relate to entrepreneurs and people who want to be entrepreneurs. So I'm recommending The Great Escape.
I'm putting that on the list right now, and I have that Andy Weir book on my list of books to read, so I'm glad to get that recommendation, Chris. Those are some great books, gentlemen.
Thank you both. Chris Roush, thanks so much for joining us on Conversations with Authors and Innovators. Again, the book is The Future of Business Journalism, Why It Matters for Wall Street and Main Street. Doug and I really recommend that you take a look at this and join us next time for other great authors and other great book recommendations. Thanks again.